Okay, good evening and welcome to our Year 10 Parent Information Evening. We have a few key messages that we're going to share with parents this evening, just around essentially the half term and the term ahead, and obviously going back into school in the spring term, reminders about some of our expectations from our students. Year 10 have a very important half term ahead. Equally so, this is all about kind of that continual drive and progress as they work towards their GCSEs, but also continuing to make sure that they're best supported, so that they're kind of getting a year 11 mindset really, because a lot of their GCSE courses will now start to step up in terms of the rigor, what's expected in terms of their understanding of topics in lessons. They've gone through that introductory phase. They should be grounded now in those courses, and so we want to just make sure that they're on the right footing as they move ahead into the following term. In terms of a reminder, our Year 10 team essentially is as follows. We have our Deputy Head, Miss Banger, who oversees a lot of the work that we do in Key Stage 4, and she'll be with Key Stage 4 most likely throughout Year 10 and 11. And we've also got our Head of Key Stage 4, Miss Sawa, who's joining me this evening.
Hello, good evening.
We also continue with Miss Irwin and Mr. Rochford as both our head of year and our learning mentor for Year 10. And at the moment, over Year 10 as the assistant head teacher and one of the senior teachers in school, that is myself, Mr. Rayworth. In terms of the evening ahead, what we're going to be looking at, and again, this is recorded just to make sure that if anybody misses this, there's an opportunity to find this on our school website later. We're going to start by looking at some of the key dates for the year group, specifically looking at those that are imminent and things that are happening over the next few weeks. We've also then got a bit of a reminder about our scholar and our learning habits focus, including our code of conduct, just because we want students to kind of come back in the spring term resettled, refocused, with the right mindset, because they're going to go into next week a spring exam window. I will talk about what that looks like afterwards as well in terms of assessment and reporting. That will look a little bit different, and for many of our Year 10 parents, if this is the first time you've got students in Key Stage 4, you will see a slightly different reporting system in terms of how we report on students' progress at this point. Ms. Sawa is also going to be talking to us this evening about work experience and our character curriculum, including our drives around IDEA and what the IDEA award looks like for our students. So if we just think about the half term ahead and what our kind of key dates are for students, next week starts our Year 10 spring exams. So the spring exams are essentially a Year 10 version of a progress test from Year 7, 8 and 9. The exams will focus on a lot of the learning that's taken place on courses so far in their GCSEs or their vocational courses. They will be looking at more exam style questions than they have been doing in Key Stage 3. The idea with that is, again, getting them ready and prepared for the rest of Year 10 and as they move into Year 11. Once we've gone through that exam window, we'll also go through a 2-week feedback session in class with their class teachers. So they will have their marks, they'll have some feedback, and they'll look at ways in which they can develop and improve responses to questions further, or how they can better support their understanding of certain topics. At the end of this half term, so from the 10th to the 14th of February, the students in Year 10 will all be on a 1-week work experience placement. There are certain things that we expect students to be completing before work experience, and we'll support them through that in the coming weeks through form time and through assemblies. There's things that we expect them to also be doing whilst they're on placement as well. So, activities that we expect them to be completing daily as they're working through each day on their work placement, but then some evaluative work that we'll do back in school afterwards. During that same week, parents will also get a report home from school, which gives you an up-to-date picture of students' progress. So as normal, that will continue to look at attendance and effort, but we'll also be talking about progress, which will include grading. So this is Key Stage 4 GCSE grading. That will focus on currently working at, not predicted and not final grading at this point, and I'll come on to talk about that later as well. During this half term and next half term, there is also a strong focus for some subjects on coursework. So as a teacher of technology, our coursework starts in Year 10 in the summer term, but for some of our vocational subjects, those coursework pieces have already started. So we want students to understand that actually there's a lot of gravity behind that, students should be focusing on coursework in year 10 because that will count towards their final grade in year 11. So when they open up their results envelope, the work that they're doing on these pieces of coursework now is part of that grade. So we want to make sure that students are on top of that work, looking at what extra sessions for support there is available to them if they need to do catch-up work. They're getting that done so they've got that strong set of coursework results in year 10, so they don't have to go back and either resit or revisit pieces of coursework in year 11 because they'll have a lot of other focuses when they move into year 11. If we think about some of our key reminders regarding kind of our expectations in school, in our classrooms, we talk to a lot of students about the idea of being a scholar. So this, again, isn't a new drive. We just refocus it and reshape it each year and make sure that students are continuing to adopt these principles whilst they're in the classroom. We want students to focus on being organised. That's organisation through their books, making sure that they're taking pride in their book. Their school exercise book is the best document that they will have for exams and supporting themselves through exams. They've got all their notes from the classroom. They've got feedback from teachers. They've got a lot of topics that they've been covering so far. So we want them to make sure that they're looking after their booklets and their organised resources for them. So actually, sometimes we encourage parents just to check in, actually, how are your books looking at the minute? If you caught up with work, is everything where it needs to be with your schoolwork? Do you have homework to complete? Things like that will really kind of support a lot of the conversations that we have in school. The other thing we ask students as well is about the idea of focused attention in the classroom. They've got a lot of information that's being passed on to them as they're going through their lessons on a day-to-day basis. As they're in those lessons, paying attention to their class teachers is going to give them information that they're going to need to use at some point in the future. That can be instruction for a learning task. That could be information that's relevant to a topic. So actually, again, what did you learn today? Asking them maybe some of the key components of a lesson they've studied. Did you learn anything new in science? What was the topics that you've covered in English? Or if it's a foundation subject, have you had any essay writing in history, for example? Again, those narratives and those conversations can really help support us in school, making sure that students feel that actually that wraparound, in school and outside of school is something that's being paid attention to, and that actually the work that they're producing is really significant and that it's important for them. In terms of Scholar, what we also focused on is reading. Reading, although we don't have specific reading mornings in form time, reading is really important for us subjects, especially in Key Stage 4. So as well as having the library in school and encouraging students to read actively in their spare time, that reading could include going back and reading through their notes. It could include reading through textbooks and revision guides, looking at information sources that are relevant to them on things like Seneca or GCSE Pod, so that they're actually reading actively to develop their fluency, their understanding of vocabulary, to make sure that they are, again, prepared for assessments and understanding the terminologies that are being used. We also talk to students about collaborate and communicate. So one of the key drives that we've had in the last half term is actually, what does communication look like in a classroom? How do we communicate and talk so that we can assess each other's understanding? How do we listen and show empathy during group discussion? If you're in a subject like RE, or you're in a subject where maybe you're debating, so that could include history, that could include their respect lessons, actually being able to talk and listen and show empathy is a really important skill. In some subjects, that also includes presentation talks. If they're in drama, if they're in enterprise, where they have to present information, it's building that confidence in them to make sure that they've got those habits that are going to help them to be successful whilst they're completing those activities. We also have our home study habit, which we've launched to students in the autumn term in preparation for their exams next week and the week after. This is all about what they're doing at home beyond homework, which is set to by their class teachers, to make sure that they're preparing for exams and assessments. We've spoke to students about the importance of using things like Cornell note-taking, or going back and looking at resources online like GCSE Pod and Seneca, using the home study site to go back and revisit, revise, recap topics that are important for them as they're preparing for exams. So they've got a plan, and we'll come back to this in a bit. They've got resources. We want them to be using those to prepare for those exams in the coming weeks, because those study skills are going to be increasingly important as we move through year 10 and then go into year 11. And then the other thing as well is a lot of our subjects at Key Stage 4 have a lot of literacy, writing of text, understanding of text, being able to write and plan out their writing is going to be increasingly important, especially if they're subjects where they've got a lot of writing to do for coursework or essay writing as part of their assessments. So those are some of our scholars that we continue to drive in school, and those sit alongside then our code of conduct. So obviously students have just had 2 weeks off. We've been out of school. They've kind of maybe broke a couple of habits and routines. And we want them to get back into those routines, really quickly, really, so they can be focused back again as part of our school community. Our code of conduct has always been something that is really clear and easy for students to understand. We want students to understand the principles of being ready, being respectful, and being safe. With those kind of 3 main principles, we want students to essentially adopt that on their day-to-day life when they're in school, on the corridors, in the classrooms, when they're outside in social time, as they're coming to school, as they're leaving school, making sure that they really use these as an opportunity to be organised and prepared, safe, making sure that they're showing respect as well for each other, as well as their teachers and when they're at home. So one of the things that we talk about with students a lot is the idea of this big 3. So ready, respectful, safe in school is making sure that they're ready with their correct uniform, making sure they've got the correct equipment each and every day. We encourage students and expect students to turn up with at least 2 black pens. Beyond that, they might have then their calculators, their pencils, their rulers in their pencil case, and their sports kits for a PE session. But they should also be turning up with full, perfect uniform, ties. If they're wearing a jumper or a blazer, that's worn in the school day. We also have a big push around coats in the school building, making sure that students are walking the school building without a coat on. Coats are fine outside where it's cooler, especially at the minute. We know what that looks like. But also being prepared and being ready for lessons by not having their mobile phone with them throughout the school day. Phones should be switched off. That's about also being respectful, respecting their lessons, respecting their learning, respecting other people's learning. So we're actively continuing to encourage that phones are not used in the school building throughout the course of the school day. They should be off, away, and in their bag. And as we've said to students, if students are using those phones in classrooms, they will be confiscated and taken away from them and given to be stored in a secure place in school. We ask them to be respectful by keeping their hands to themselves. We don't want play fighting. We don't want silliness or irresponsible behaviour on the corridors. We want them to navigate between lessons efficiently and effectively so they're on time. And part of the way that they can do that and be safe is to just walk on the left. So those reminders we're going to continue to drive over the coming weeks as we want those routines to be re-established. And many of our students in year 10 are good role models and examples for lots of students in the younger years. So we continue to push and celebrate their successes. We just want to make sure that that's consistent across all students in our year group. In terms of some of our big 3, like I mentioned there, making sure that uniform and equipment is being worn. They've got a school bag, they've got a pencil case, they remove their outdoor coats when they're inside the school building. A coat is absolutely fine. Like I said, today is a very, very cold day in January. It's fine for them to have a coat, but when they walk through that school door, they need to make sure that that coat is turned off. And again, some of these messages will continue to communicate through the school day. Personal space, again, making sure that students were reminded that personal belongings should be secure in their bags. They shouldn't be taking other people's belongings. If it's a joke or if it's meant to be done in banter, it's not something that we advocate and we encourage. We want them to be actively disassociating from that type of behaviour whilst they're in school. That makes our school run better, it's smoother, it allows them to focus on their learning, and it reduces the number of incidents and behaviour points that students are going to get because they're doing the right thing. Importantly, we keep talking to students about transitions between lessons. We want them to keep on the left, but also make sure that they're taking the fastest, calmest route. If they're transitioning between English and science, they need to know the quickest route to get there so that they're on time for their learning. So there's not any wasted time, especially as they're in year 10 and year 11 next year. There's no time to waste. These courses run at rapid pace. So being on time and punctual to lessons, leaving in the correct manner, being in class, paying attention is what's going to help them to become successful over the course of the next 2 years. Pardon me. Another thing that we encourage students to do, and these are just little things that we probably do as adults in our day-to-day life as well, is just being set up for the day, the night before. Having a proper routine the night before to make sure that students are in the morning ready to just pick up, get dressed, get their teeth brushed and get their way to school on time for 8:30, making sure they're at school for 8:20 so they can be on lines by 8:30 is ideal. But also, being prepared the night before, making sure they've got the right books for the day ahead. If they've got a business lesson and they forget their business book, it just means they're making notes in either a separate book or on bits of paper, and it's hard to then keep track and keep focus of the notes that they're taking in their classes. So set up the night before, set up for the day as one of our walkthroughs really allows students to then be focused and doing the right thing during the course of the school day. Attendance and punctuality continues to be a massive push for us. We know that students who get some of the top scores and top grades in coursework and in their exams have high attendance. We understand fully that there are times when students miss school because of personal circumstances. That can be in the family or for themselves or through illnesses. But as much as possible, we want students to have 100% attendance. Strong attendance leads to the best grade outcomes for students. Punctuality as part of that as well, making sure that they're on time. We say we want them in school by 8:20, we want them on lines by 8:30, and then we can get them to form time to start the day properly. And then for themselves as well, we keep reminding them being punctual to lessons, being on time in the right place at the right time will continue to be a drive because that's going to help make sure that they are successful. Thinking of the next 2 weeks, we've obviously got our year 10 spring exams. Now we've chosen not to call these progress tests like we have done previously because we want the students to understand that actually in year 10, these exams are more meaningful. These are not just tests where we're looking at a measure of progress. We're at this point starting to focus on really how are they prepared for year 11. So at this point in the year, they're going into the year 10 spring exams as part of learning cycle 1. So this is their assessment of everything that they've learned since the start of their GCSE courses. And they'll have this for all of their subjects. This will be a assessment paper that has got exam questions in it, some multiple choice questions in it. Depending on the subject, it could be performance based if it's dance, for example. It could be portfolio based if it's art. There could be some specific tasks that relate to different subjects, but they're going to feel like they are completing quite a rigorous assessment. They've been supported through this informed time. They've been supported through their messaging and their contacts with the year team and prepared for this through form time as well. And this will then lead them into their year 10 summer exams. The step up into the summer will mean that some of those exams will take place in the exam hall. So for the first time, they'll go into the exam hall. They'll be in exam conditions, like we'd expect them to be in the next couple of weeks, but sat at an exam desk. So they start to understand what that will look like when they move into year 11. Because in year 11, they'll go through this process 3 times, including their final exams. They will have a mock in October and November of year 11. They will have a mock in the spring term of year 11, and then they will have their final terminal exams at the end of year 11. And those are the ones that are going to be the results envelopes in the August of year 11 once they've left us. Alongside all of that, if they've got coursework, will be coursework completion as well. So for these assessments, they will take place from Monday the 13th through to Friday the 31st of January. They are designed to be a check at this point of students' understanding so far on courses. We've given students a study planner so they can start to block out their study sessions at home. They should have been working on that before Christmas and this week at home. We've also given students exam information, so information about what's going to be covered on each assessment. And we've given them the tools to be able to complete study skills at home as well. So I mentioned earlier, our focus for year 10 is Cornell note taking, but also learning online using things like GCSE Pod or platforms like Seneca. They've had all of that instruction. We continue to push that in school, and teachers are pushing that in classrooms as well. And all of this can be found through our home study sites. So giving students everything we can possibly to help make sure that this process feels supported and allows them to really focus on that 2-week exam window and doing the best that they can do. Some of those exams have been structured and timetabled for them. That's easy when it's core subjects like English, maths and science. So on their study planner, they've got the dates for those assessments. So next Tuesday, for example, on the 14th, when they're in their math lesson period 3 and 4, they will have the maths exam. And on the Wednesday morning, when they're in English, they will have their English exam. The week 2 will be science and maths again. And they need to then communicate with their teachers about when the assessments will take place in their specific subjects. That's going to vary because students have different subjects at different times. So my design technology class, for example, I've spoken to those students today and made it explicitly clear that they will have their assessment on Monday the 20th. So I would expect students now to be writing that onto their plan so that they know that actually next Monday we're going to be in lesson, we're going to be learning, but the week after I need to be prepared for that exam because that's going to take place on the 20th. So those conversations we expect students to be having with their teachers will be having those conversations with students, and that just is about making sure that that exam window is a bit more spread out for them over that 2 weeks. They don't feel like everything's crammed into 1 week where it's just exam, exam, exam. We try and get a balance and a bigger, broader picture over the 2 weeks, just to try and ease that workload a little bit for students and allow them a little bit of break time to focus. In terms of the exam information, these have been curated lists from their curriculum leaders and their class teachers. So in English, for example, they've been given a specific list of topics and instructions to help them prepare, as well as some keywords that they can go back and look in their books at their glossaries to make sure they understand it. So rather than going and revising and studying everything that they think they need to know for English, these are really bespoke lists that we can afford to give them at this point to help them feel supported through that process. If they're using their exercise books, that's great. They've got lots of notes from lessons in there. If they are using online platforms, they're used to using Seneca for homework. GCSE Pod we launched just before Christmas to students. There was a little bit of a glitch for some students' usernames and passwords. Those have been getting processed over the Christmas break. So students can go back and use GCSE Pod as well at this time, using their username as their email or their password, which is on the screen and is shared with students in their year team page as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got quite specific methods, of how we want students to study at home. So using Cornell note taking, if they want to go back and use tactics and strategies that they've used previously that work for them, maybe revision cards or making mind maps, that's great. One of the important steps for them in year 10 though is going to be looking at doing some self-testing. So practicing some questions. So when they're looking at things like the home study site, they will see that there's knowledge organizers that are available for them as well. So when they go into the home study site and click on the knowledge organizers, and they go into a specific subject like English or science, or they go into geography, knowledge organizers will be a bulk of information. They can use that information to revise, to prepare from, but then they should be maybe using some of their questions from their exercise book, questions from revision guides, questions from Seneca or GCSE Pod to practice that they know those topics. And that practice element is what's going to strengthen their understanding of the topics and make sure that they're successful as they complete those exams next week. The home study site that I've mentioned, we've talked to students about. This is their second year using this, so they should feel more confident with this year. And we've given an additional method of finding that home study site. So students can go to the main school website. At the top of the school website, there is a tab that says Students. When they click onto that and drop down to where it says Home Study Support, they will then be able to go straight into the home study site itself. That's got links to all our online learning platforms. It's got links to our resources for revision tactics and study habits. It's also got some little videos that are on there that talk them through the process of making cornell notes or making a mind map that they can go back and look at. They'll find past papers and look at past exam questions on there if they want to, as well as finding knowledge organisers. So there's lots of different bits of information for them, so they can go through the main website or they can go through their year team. We've tried to put as much information on there as possible. They will also find an electronic copy of their study planner. They'll find an electronic copy of their progress test information, as well as other resources that are really relevant to them. So we're trying to get students to use this as a bit of a one-stop shop. Everything you need for these exams in the next 2 weeks, you will be able to find on that home study site. Following this, we'll then go into an assessment and reporting window. Now, we've done this before already this year, where we focused primarily on effort, and we looked at the effort data for in class, and we looked at effort data for their homework. And alongside that, as parents, you'll have received their up-to-date attendance percentages as well. In the last week of this half term, you will get a short report home that will include effort data again. So focusing on effort scores of 1 being excellent, poor effort would be 4, and that would be the same for in-class or at-home efforts with their home learning and their home study. But what we'll also have in that short report is current grades for students at this point. Again, if you've had a student or a child that's gone through our Key Stage 4 system before, you might be familiar with the grading system as it looks at the moment, which is a 1 to 9 grading system. What I've included here is a bit of an overview as to the old school system that we used to use, which is A star to G or A star to U. And it shows there a comparison. Now, what we're thinking should be our focus for students is the idea of continual progress and continual development. At this point, it's unlikely that many students will be getting a grade 9 because it's their first big assessment. They're partway through year 10, but they should be using the current grade systems that we provide as a platform to try and build on their success and build on their improvement. So a grade 4 is a standard pass, often needed to get into colleges or apprenticeship providers beyond year 11. Grade 5 is a strong pass. Grade 6 or grade 7 would be something that we would expect to see in subjects that students are looking to possibly study at A level or beyond. What I will say as a bit of a caveat to that is that the threshold for colleges does change year on year. And so a lot of our colleges now expect higher grades for students to be enrolled onto courses. So if students are looking to go to Loreto or Zavarian, Manchester College, Trafford College, they just need to make sure they're getting as high a grade as possible and at least a grade 7 in the subjects that they want to study. When it comes to the grades that get sent home, like I said, it's a current grade. So this is where we think students are currently working at that point. So that will be on the 9 to 1 scale. If students who are a high achieving student are currently getting a grade 4 or a grade 5, there's no room to panic on that point. There's no concern at this point because, like I said, we're only got partway through the course. There's still course content to be covered. There are aspects of the course that haven't yet been delivered. So it's just a current progress benchmark. If students are achieving quite highly within those grade boundaries, so if they're looking at maybe a 6 or a 7 at this point, actually, are they doing something now to secure that grade moving forward? Are they going to go back and revisit and recap? If they're not getting a 1 to 9 grading scale, it could be because the students are completing a vocational course. Now, our vocational qualifications will be graded as pass, merit, or distinction, and that will be either a level 1 or a level 2. Students should be aspiring on a vocational qualification for a level 2 pass, merit, or distinction. If students on a vocational course get a distinction in coursework and their exam, they can then get a distinction star at level 2 as well. So for GCSE courses, we use the 9 to 1 scale. For the vocational courses, we use a pass merit distinction at level 1 and level 2. And at this point, we are only going to be reporting on currently working at. We don't do predicted grades in year 10, and we don't do predicted grades in the first part of year 11. We only focus on currently working at grades where currently students are working in their subjects based on the performance in exams and assessments. Post that information coming home to parents, what we'll also share is something that we've been using the last couple of years, which is called our Next Steps Progress Report. With this, if a student has gone through that progress cycle where they've completed an exam and maybe that is showing them getting a grade 3 or a grade 4, what we then have is a report that shows them how they can move through to the next grade. So actually, I've got a grade 4 in this exam, that's my currently working at. What do I need to do now to move to a grade 5? So that idea of continuous progression and continuous improvement supports them through to the next step. So they can use this almost like a tick list. So how do I get to a grade 5? Once I've got to a grade 5, can I move to a 6 or to a 7? And for our students who want to achieve the top grades of a grade 9, again, it's what's the next step beyond that. It could be that actually, rather than focusing on business, for example, a 6 or a 9 mark question, you need to secure your understanding of how to complete a 12 mark question at that point. With this as well, there is that coursework element that sits behind it. So for subjects that have coursework, it's going to be really important that students are getting the right foot on the ladder in year 10 and not waiting until year 11. If students are completing coursework in a subject like health and social care at the minute or enterprise, their coursework that they do now will be important to their final grade in year 11. So rather than going back and have to revisit, re-enter, resubmit pieces of work, if they can do well in that now, that eases the pressure in year 11, but it can also mean that their grades are nice and secure as they move ahead. So we will send information about those reports home at the end of this half term. Once we've done the exam window and once we've shared that with our students, that information will come to parents. I'm going to pass over to Ms. Zawa, who's going to talk to us now about work experience.
Thank you. You need a break now.
I don't talk a lot.
Okay, thank you very much for listening. And now I'm going to talk about work experience. I know it's a busy time for next 2 weeks will be quite busy for year 10, especially for the exams and preparation. I know we did do a lot of work on it, but most of all at the moment we're going to focus back on work experience. And we all know why we as a school do the work experience, why we provide that whole week experience when the students are off school and they are in their work placement and having the opportunity to gain experience. Okay, so that is just the general why the reason behind for work experience. Year 11s are applying for colleges right now, and they for their personal statement they at least write half a page about the work experience where they have done work experience, what skills they have gained, whether they passed their work experience or they didn't. Well, colleges are interested in what they write about work experience, especially when they go for the interviews. They talk about their work experience. So it is important that the students gain the most of this experience, and they know what they when they're going there, they know what they're looking for, and make the most of it. Okay, and then the next bit is whilst they're on the placement, that is a crucial bit, because every year we do have few complaints here and there and a few hiccups here and there. So we make sure that when they maintain the highest standards, the most important bit is arrive on time. It is important that the students know when they're supposed to be in for their placement, because this will be completely different to the school timings, and they need to communicate with work placement retiming. And I think the best timing could be maybe if they can ring by next Friday, so it will give them a month to find out what time they're supposed to start, what time they're supposed to finish, who will be in charge, when they will get there, and especially when they're talking to someone, get the name. That is very, 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 very important, because sometimes the people turn up for their placement and that's who you have been talking to, or they don't have the placement. It is important that you confirm your placement next by next Friday. You also need to think of, they also need to think about the route, which route to take, and how they're going to get there, how they're going to come back. It's not going to be the lastminute.com. Make sure that they are more organized, especially how they're going to get there. They need to, when they get there, ask about their business policy, okay? And then in their business policy, if they said that they're not allowed to use mobile phones, then the mobile phone needs to be switched off and should be in their bags, or should be in their pocket, or they will have some designated places where they can leave their mobile phones. They shouldn't be arguing about why we can't use mobile phones. Right, this is important because the students should not take any photos without the permission. They shouldn't be taking any anyway, but just in case, if there is that, then they need to ask for the permission. And they're not allowed to post anything online, or this is where I'm working, this is what is happening right now. They're not allowed to post anything online, either with or without permission. They're not allowed to do that. And same with when they are looking for the data, they need to be sometimes interested in find out about other people's, the data. They're not allowed to look at the data. Data can be confidential. In the same way that the other people they're working over, they are not allowed to look at your data. Okay, so the data protection is very, very important. And do not share any information if you're not comfortable sharing it. If there's any issues, you just need to ring school straight away. You can ask about Miss Irvin, and I will be overall in charge of the work experience. You can ask to me as well. And Miss Walsh, she will be she's also in charge of work experience, so she will be the main person who will be liaising with the placements, who will be communicating with the parents, who will be communicating with the Art Futures. Okay, and then the diary. If you can see the picture there, this is the work experience diary. We might change a little bit. We might condense it. We might adapt it based on the feedback we had last year. But the students need to complete their work experience diary when they are over there on a daily basis, because the work experience diary is going to be the evidence of what they've been doing on each day. And then the people they're in charge of our students, they are going to sign the diary at the end of the placement. They're going to sign it, and they say yes, that person has passed their work placement, they have passed their work experience, they have gained these skills, and how happy they are, or whatever they're going to write. That little bit, the sheet at the back, the evaluation sheet, is going to help us to decide whether the student has passed their placement or not. So diary is important. Once they get the diary, can you please make sure that they put the diary in somewhere safe, and when they start their placement, they will take their diary with them. Don't take the diary in their hand. Make sure there's a little bag or a rucksack or whatever they're going to take, their mobile phone, their stationery if they need it, and their diary should be somewhere safe in the bag. Okay. But remember, why we're doing work placement is all about the skill development, okay? And what they should get the most out of is time management. They're quite used to with the school's timings, but when you get there, there's a different timing for each task. Their organization skills will improve, their communication skills will improve, and this is something that they will help them these are the lifelong skills. So they will be writing, when they're writing about their experience, they're not just going to say, oh, I have done this, this, and this. Yes, I have done this and this, but I have gained this skill by doing this. Because when they're writing their personal statement next year, or they're applying for the colleges, they talk about their skills that they have gained during their work experience. After the placement, there will be a thank you. They can write a little card, or they say thank you to share the gratitude. And they're going to just give the work experience diary, and the work experience diary is going to be signed by their whoever is in charge, and they're going to bring the diary back to school, and it's going to get submitted. And then I will be doing checking the diaries, and Miss Walsh will be checking the diaries, and we say yes, and then we will issue the certificates. Okay, so that is all about work experience, and I'm also going to tell you that next Wednesday, when it's an assembly time, our teacher is going to come back again, and they're going to talk about the expectations, what to do next. So they're going to talk to our students in detail about what we should, what the expectations are, what to do. But please, by next Friday, make phone calls to the employer just to confirm the placement, just to confirm that your child is attending that placement, and ask about the timing so they know that yes, and get the name of that person, whoever you're talking to. The other thing is this, the character development. Okay, every form time we got half an hour of form time. So what we basically did during this form time, we prepared them for work experience. We prepared them for their exams. These were the two main focus. And as you have noticed in our autumn term, they had the post 16 evenings, okay, and work experience being launched, the idea award being launched as well. And then lots of things been happening at that time. And each Thursday, so once every week, we've been basically focusing on employability skill. We pick one of the skill and we talk in detail about that skill, so that then the students are aware that when they go for work placement, what skills they need to develop. So they are quite more knowledgeable. It is quite interesting when I was reading the personal statements from current year 11s, and the way they talk about their skills is just like reading someone's statement who is applying for for the jobs. Their personal statements look very, very skilled, and the way we prepare them, they know what those skills are, and when they get there, they need to also think about those skills they need to improve. Also, we've been talking about how to prepare them for the exams as well. So that we've been working on revision techniques. We've been also working on how to organize the revision timetable. We've been also talking about, as Mr. Raver said, the Cornell note taking. We talked about the mind maps. We talked about the testing. So they are prepared, for these exams, but still, uh, these things won't be meaningful until they do at home, they test at home. So please do ask them, where is your exam timetable? You got exam next week. Let me show me, what you're doing. Have you got the revision list? Have you got the PLCs? And have you been, are you only just making, have you been like a passive revision or active revision? Active revision is all about testing. Take interest, because this could be quite a lonely time for them when they are revising. I just want the parents to be involved. And coming up, as you can see, during National Careers Week, students will take part in activities focusing on developing their knowledge of the range of careers available to them. This is what we will do more for. After work experience, there will be more focus on the careers. And also our Frontiers Week will look at local labour market information and the careers and the industry areas as well. So there's a lot going on there. In spring term, all students will prepare for and take part in work experience, what we just talked about. And we will continue to learn about post-16 options, including the apprenticeships as well. So after work experience, there will be a lot of continuing what we have started to make sure that we keep the momentum going. Idea. Are we basically, I would just say we're more or less halfway through, or okay, we've done one term already, and students have done a lot of work on on these badges, and there are a lot of students who have secured the bronze award. But remember, at the end of this year, their target is to get bronze award at least, and silver, bonus, gold. Phenomenal. Think about if the students are applying for the colleges and they got bronze and silver and gold, if possible. The awards for the idea. But the idea project is not randomly been placed. There's a lot of thought behind it, and Mr. Rayworth is brilliant at this. And if you can see in spring one, the idea focus is also will be help prepare them for the interviews, and also prepare them for world of work and customer service. So So the work they will be doing once every week when they're doing the completing the idea badges, they also revolve around the work experience. And then the next one is going to be the habits for learning and success and digital. So each the form time and this personal development curriculum is very much the tightly, the pack with each. It just goes what's happening in school, what's happening in lessons, what's happening outside. It's all interlinked. So we just want them to make sure that they are in the best position, they get the best experience in year 10, and then when they go to year 11, they are ready for their, the college applications, personal statements, applying for the colleges, and the mock exams. And I was just, I think, also in a process of booking taster days with the colleges as well. We just booked Bavarian and Loreto in July time, and we will be taking our students for the taster day. They're going to spend all day in colleges. Well, we're also looking for Trafford and Manchester as well. We're going to take them to those colleges as well, but there will be a criteria, and criteria will be, again, their effort grades have to be good. Their attendance and punctuality has to be good. They need to earn those places. They need to earn those taster days. So please carry on working on the good punctuality, good attendance, good uniform, good effort, best behavior, and hopefully that they will have a best experience in year 10. Final reminders, Mr. Ray, with any?
Yeah, just going back to what we started with in terms of some of those key dates from the start of our presentation this evening. Obviously, next week and the week after, we know that that's going to be quite mentally challenging for some of our students, making sure they've got that exam mindset ready as they go into their year 10 spring exams. But that really is about them showing their progress at this point on their GCSE courses. We'll be making sure that they're supported through that process and checking in with students to make sure that they're feeling comfortable. But that is really a good measure and benchmark at this point in the year of where they're currently working. And that, like I said earlier, that will follow a 2-week feedback window. So again, that continual support for students so they can look at how they can improve on their performance with exam questions. Then the work experience that Ms. Sarwell's talked through, really important week for year 10 students. The last week of this half term, so they'll do their work experience placement, go into the half term break, and then come back ready to learn and move into that next phase of year 10, which is learning cycle 2, getting ready for those summer exams and being ready for college taster days. In the meantime, we'll also be sharing with yourselves our assessment reports. So we'll give you an update on effort and attendance, and that'll be the last week of this half term. And that will give you, again, just a reminder, currently working at grades for students, not a predicted grade based on where we think they will be at the end of year 11. That currently working at grade is much more impactful because it allows them to build on their progress. And as a final reminder about coursework and NEAs, if students have started that already, or if they're going to start that in the coming weeks and months, that really is an important process for them to go through because those will count towards the end of year 11 grades. So if they have coursework, if they've got a portfolio for art, coursework for health and social care, coursework for DT, any of that takes place in year 10, they really need to push and challenge themselves. And if they need support with that, look at what extra sessions after school is available to them so they can make sure they're getting support from their classroom teachers.
Also, there is a homework club, or I will just say exam preparation club every Tuesday after school in F13. Also on Thursday as well in F13. So please ask them to come around. I teach science, so they will do can offer DT, and it's any issues, re-exam timetable, where to find the resources, what to revise, we are there to help. Whatever they have done this year, they will be tested on that. So I'm a science teacher, so the students will be tested for biology paper 1. So they've all been told the content for the biology paper 1. They are, they need to, the teachers should have provided the PLC, what they should be revising. They should know what the exam board is. It's an AQA exam board. So that kind of information student needs to collect, what the exam board is, where to find the information, where the specification is, and then start revising. Remember, it's a learning process. This is just the beginning of the journey towards GCSE. Of course, the results will help teachers to put them in the right set, so that does have an impact. But anything that hasn't been taught, they will not get tested for these exams. Whatever has been taught will be get tested. And if you look at the revision list the students have received, it's in there. Whatever they have done this year, in sub-subjects maybe, because we started B1 biology at the end of year 9, so that we will just say, okay. But then again, speak to the teachers, look for the information, what they need to revise, go through with the harder topics first, and have that conversation with your child. For any issues, any help, I'm here. Mr. Rayworth is here. We're all here. And I'm working with the 11s, 3 exams, so I will be in a better position to tell them. Could the document with which exam board each subject is to put back on the website, please? So what we can do, we can provide, what I will do, I will upload that information on Teams. Okay, so students can go on Teams and you can see that which exam board is with what subject, and it will be easy for you to know, when the students are revising, especially when we talk about testing some materials online, especially for science. We use physics and maths tutor, and when you go onto the physics and maths tutor website, there's a lot of exam boards. So if they click on exam board AQA, they're testing, they're learning the right content, the right material.
With a lot, that's in response to a question that's come through to us. So actually, with a lot of this stuff that we put onto the home study site for students, we've put in exam board specific content on there. So the stuff that we've selected is going on there. Our platforms like Seneca and GCSE Pod, our curriculum teams have mapped those against the exam board. So they're only going to see content that's relevant to their exam boards. We will pull that list together and we'll put that onto the year team page though, as well as a request that's come through, just in case that's an additional layer of support that parents need. Okay. If there is any further information or support that's needed, please get in touch with a member of the year team, and we'll do our best to try and support you through that. We will sign off from this meeting now. The recording of this will be available and published on our website. But I do appreciate that it's early in January, and thank you very much for your time this evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of it.
Thank you.